And welcome back to the Standard Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jono, and I'm here to bring you the Thursday Night Football preview, Cowboys versus the Seahawks. Let's get into it. All right, let's jump into this matchup between the 8-3 Cowboys and the 6-5 Seahawks. Cowboys are sitting atop the wild card at the 5 seed, and the Seahawks are sitting at the bottom of the wild card as the 7 seed for the NFC. Currently, the Vikings are playing the Bears. They're at halftime. Vikings win, they'll jump themselves up into that 7 seed for the wild card. Good for those Justin Jefferson owners, so you should be rooting for those Vikings out there. The over/under for this game is 46.5 points, so it's moderate over/under total. It's not up in the low 50s or down in the high 30s. So that being said, let's jump into the first team here, and we'll talk about the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott is playing MVP caliber football. I expect it to continue into this game here against the Seahawks. I know it's not the easiest of games on a Thursday night. However, let's not forget he's getting a full week of rest considering he played on this past Thursday and Thanksgiving. So I'm not worried about a short week for them. It's more or less for the Seahawks here. So you're starting Dak Prescott. You're starting Tony Pollard. He had 19 total touches this past week, and 13 of them being rushes. Rico Dowdle is a sit for me this week. It's a tough part to say sit because he did have a 15-yard reception for a touchdown this past game. However, he only had 4 total touches. He had 3 rushes and 1 reception. So those are the type of numbers you don't want to have in your starting lineup and hope for a touchdown. So I'm going to say start Tony Pollard here, especially because when you look at it, running backs versus Seahawks, they've had 12 total touchdowns this entire season given up and 2 receiving touchdowns. They have a 4.08 yards per carry average, and Tony Pollard was finally ripping off some good runs this past week. CeeDee Lamb is going to be a start. You're going to start him every week. He's a lock and loaded player for you here. Brandon Cooks is a sleeper. Wide receivers versus Seahawks. Since week 6, all but one game, they've given up at least 80 yards or a touchdown to a wide receiver. Not necessarily always the wide receiver 1 on teams either, so I know that stat's kind of misleading, but look for CeeDee Lamb to still stay on top, and Brandon Cooks could be the benefactor of a touchdown because in some of those games you had number 1 wide receiver scoring 80-plus yards and the wide receiver 2 getting that touchdown there. So Cooks to me is a good flex play. He's a wide receiver 3 flex option. CeeDee Lamb is locked and loaded wide receiver 1. Jake Ferguson is a sit for me. This team has been stout against the tight ends. There have only been 2 tight ends to score more than 8 fantasy points in a game, and that was Mark Andrews, who ended up having 80 total yards, and so that was the 8 points, and then David Njoku was in the double digits because he was able to have a touchdown. The other touchdown they've given up was to a guy that had low yardage, didn't even crack 8 points himself. So I don't like Jake Ferguson, but you have to love the Dallas Cowboys defense. A struggling Seattle offense and a team that's still trying to work their way and claw their way into this wild card. I like the Cowboys coming out and giving it to them here. So the highest scoring fantasy defense out there, you got to roll them out there every single week. Let's move on to the Seattle Seahawks. And before I jump into the details and the starts and sits here, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification button so you get all the updates as we drop them. If you had already done that, you would have seen that we had our waiver wire Week 13 waiver wire episode drop earlier this week, and we are going to have another notification pop up on your phone or in your email to let you know that we are dropping our weekly Week 13 preview. That is a Saturday morning release, so you can have your cup of joe, your bowl of cereal, and sit down and listen to some football talk with Chris and I. So let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks here. It's pretty much the same as it was for us this past week. It's a tough matchup again, especially against this defense. Cowboys have been pretty good against the quarterbacks. They have been a little bit more susceptible, but I will say the first time they've given up more than 253 yards in the air was this past week, and that was to Sam Howell, who is, I believe right now, he's leading, if not second in yardage for the season. But To me, I just don't love this for Geno Smith. He hasn't looked the same. He hasn't been able to be on the same page as his receivers. He's going to have to throw the ball in this game, so I understand trying to play it. I just don't love it. If you have a better QB streamer, like we mentioned in our waiver episode, like Russell Wilson, or even Kenny Pickett has a better matchup against Arizona, this may be not one you want to try and tread into. In terms of running backs, Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet. If Kenneth Walker's healthy, even if he is, I don't like him this week. If Charbonnet's the one to go and not Walker, I don't like him like I didn't last week either. The Cowboys have been pretty good against the running backs. 0 touchdowns in the last 3 games. Since James Conner's big Week 3 blow-up of 98 yards, no running back has rushed for over 69 yards, and that 69-yard run game was by Jordan Mason of the 49ers. So it's not even one that you could really even say, hey, that was expected, or it's a big-time running back that somebody's going to be starting. So to me, they haven't given up a lot of touchdowns, only 5 rushing touchdowns and 1 receiving to the running back position. It is not an easy one to go up against. And it's not like Seattle's been able to run the ball like they did in the first couple weeks. Receiver-wise, though, Metcalf and Lockett are going to be starts. Jackson Smith and Jigba will be a sit for us again this week. He did have the 3 catches for 41 yards. But Metcalf did have 9 targets, and Lockett had 5. They were the heaviest targeted 2 of those trio, so I like starting them there, especially Metcalf with the 9 targets. I'm hoping he comes down with some more here in this game, and you could expect, hopefully, a little bit of garbage time if the Cowboys start to take it away a little bit. So you're not going to be playing the Seattle Seahawks defense against this Cowboys offense. Like I said, Dak is playing MVP caliber football. His wide receivers are running all over the field. He's making it look pretty easy, and that's making Tony Pollard's job a little bit easier too as well. So I expect them to get scored on early and often in this game. So that's the end of our Thursday night preview episode. Thanks for tuning in. As always, we'll see you next time.